We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And for the first time in 2026, we are discussing new content because Wonder Man is coming out in just a few days, which means we are gearing up with our predictions episode as we head into what is going to be a really big week since we're getting all 8 episodes this week. So, without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to Katie, and she is going to get us started with our predictions.
Yeah, well, let's start first with, who is Wonder Man from a high level, because I think the most important thing here is understanding just who the character himself is before we get into anything with the show. So, Wonder Man, Simon Williams, we've been introduced plenty of times in the trailers to his name, is a superhero with ionic energy powers, and we'll get into that, but essentially he's a human battery. That is really what you're going to understand the most about him. He has superhuman strength, durability, and flight. And team-wise, because we always like to cover who his main team members are, he is really set on the Avengers roster. He holds a spot there pretty regularly, but he also does hold a spot on the West Coast Avengers, which is always coming up. We haven't really obviously explored that all too much, but it does make sense. He is based in California. We know some other heroes that are also based in California. So that is just another group that we haven't seen in the MCU. But hey, right now we also have 2 Avengers teams. Who's to say one isn't the West Coast Avengers at some point and one is the regular Avengers? We don't know yet. So that is like from a very, very high level who he is. Again, power-wise, think of him as a human battery. That is how he is described in like everything you will do research wise. He has just pure ionic energy to him.
Yeah, and on top of that, I do want to dive a little bit into kind of how he gets his powers in the comics, which I think is going to be a pretty big divergence from what we're going to see in the show. So in the comics, he actually gets his powers from Zemo, which probably like 99.99999% not going to happen in the show for a couple of reasons. One, Baron Zemo is a very different guy in the comics than the version that we have in the MCU. And also, the MCU version really hates super powered individuals. So the idea of him, creating an enhanced person is like really just like not in line with his character and his character's motivations.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I think from what we've seen of this show, they are not going to go the traditional route of this is the origin story of Simon Williams becoming Wonder Man, the superhero, because it seems very much like we meet Simon Williams who already has powers, and he is trying to hide that because there are no enhanced individuals allowed in Hollywood. I don't think we're going to get that very traditional superhero arc of meet normal man. Normal man, transforms into superhero. Normal man, now non normal man, superhero man, then goes and fights evil. I don't think that's what we're going to get. I also think, knowing that the studio is trying to be very meta about this, they're being very tongue in cheek about the idea of superhero fatigue and all those things. I think they're really going to try to flip that formula on its head. So I just want to put that out there of kind of how he gets his powers in the comics. But one, I don't think it really matters for the show. And two, they are probably not going to follow the comic book origin for this character, just given kind of the players that are already on the board and how they've been portrayed thus far.
Yeah, I highly doubt that, as you said, it's going to be Zemo in any capacity. And really, I don't know if we're gonna. I guess I should just say I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see an origin here. I wouldn't be shocked if we kind of saw a little bit more of the Tom Holland Spider-Man route, where it's
Yep.
just like a one-off line of like, "Hey, I got bit by a radioactive spider," and then we never talk about it again. It's like explained. It's explained. That's all you need to know. He's Spider-Man. Amazing. So I really think that's all we need. I think we've seen a lot of origin stories. In this case, as you said, don't get me wrong, plenty origin stories have been changed in the MCU from comic to big screen or small screen, whatever. But in this case, I mean, what else are you going to say? I guess like if we're really going to go in depth, you really got to think about it. So I think it's probably easier to just avoid it altogether, be able to just say he's here, this is who he is, but this is what's currently facing him. I think that we've seen the same thing happen again and again, the usual superhero story, as you also pointed out. I think it works to just kind of skip it. We just throw us in there, let us understand what's going on. Cool. As a character, this is going to be interesting because I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but as the trailers have been coming out, they have been showing more and more his powers and that he is or I should call him a superhero yet. He does have abilities already. But if you notice at the beginning, they were avoiding that a lot. So I
Yeah.
think it's kind of interesting how they've been building that for us. So that in and of itself is going to be a very interesting aspect. I do want to get into the other really big player that we up until a few days ago didn't know was a part of this show. And that's the DODC, which is reappearing for the first time in I couldn't tell you how long.
Well, I actually had that same question, and I did had to look up like what properties did we see the DODC in. So the last time that we saw them was She-Hulk, which I didn't remember because frankly, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But we have seen them, of course, in Ms. Marvel. They played a huge role. They were in No Way Home. They
Yeah.
were, of course, in Homecoming. They're actually like the main driver that creates the Vulture
Yeah.
in Homecoming. I also didn't realize this. When I was doing this research, they were apparently name dropped in the first Iron Man film because they were at one point a part of Shield, which I thought was super interesting and something I definitely didn't pick up on when doing a replay or watching that. But you're right. We have not seen them in a little bit, but clearly they are continuing to be an antagonist. And especially this one agent that we've seen now a couple times, P. Cleary, who was definitely in No Way Home and I believe Ms. Marvel as well. And I think the interesting thing about this show that I wasn't expecting is they've actually recruited Trevor basically to inform on Simon. They, for however they know this, they have a lead that Simon is potentially enhanced, and they are going after him to try to prove that. And at some point, they are able to use Trevor's past as, the Mandarin against him and use him as a spy. So I think that'll be extremely interesting as well, because up until pretty recently, when it was revealed that the DODC was going to be a real part of this show, it seemed like Trevor really was acting, pun intended, in a mentor role. And I think some of that is very real, but there is a line where I think that's going to cause some betrayal because there is, a part of him that's probably also informing on Simon. So a lot of layers here. And I'm curious, knowing that they've already revealed that, what aren't they revealing? Because that seems like a pretty big twist that they've already told us.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is I think for the first time we have an antagonist. Up until this point, I'm not sure we were really given a clear foe because It's very meta, this show. We've been
Yeah.
talking about it for weeks. Anytime we have news about it, you could tell even from the trailers, it very much calls certain things out. Like, it reminds me a lot of the fourth wall breaking in She-Hulk.
Yeah.
So, I think because of that, it's been hard to pinpoint what exactly the threat is. And
Yeah.
because we also for a long time didn't know, is he getting his powers throughout the show? Like, what exactly, how is this working? We're just seeing this show about this guy who's trying to be an actor and his auditions, and Trevor's in it because Trevor, of course, is also an actor, and all of these other things. So it was never like, what is he fighting? What are we going up against other than other actors trying to get a role? Like, what is the threat? And I would say, and obviously there are still twists down the road. We haven't watched the show, but I wouldn't be shocked to say the DODC is a very clear antagonist to me. They've been before. Think about Miss Marvel. That was really, I mean, obviously there were still other foes in play. There were other things happening, but the DODC were playing a very big part in being an antagonist and crossing lines that we saw in that show. So, and that's not the first time. Like, anytime they're in the picture, they're definitely not operating in a way that makes sense to be like, you're the good guy. That being said, I think that this sets up to clearly have them as an antagonist to some degree. I do believe we will have a more prominent antagonist that makes himself known at some point or another. Because at the end of the day, let's be real, the DODC is not really a threat to somebody who has the abilities that Simon has.
Well, right. They're not probably a physical threat, like to your point, like with the powers that he has. Though we have seen them use extremely advanced technology on superpowered individuals in order to disrupt their abilities and be able to try to capture them. I will say though, if you think about what we've seen with Simon, he's extremely driven. He has this goal. He wants to be an actor. While they may not be able to physically detain him, if he is kind of revealed to be a superpowered individual, they can affect him in the sense that they will completely destroy his life and his dream. So I do think that that is an interesting antagonism there, maybe not on the physical side, but from, his actual ability to live his life and do what he wants to do with it.
Yes, I'm just saying I think it's not the strongest that it could be to be the main antagonist. I think is the point I'm trying to make. I think especially cuz we've seen them play this exact role before, I don't really see them being like, to Miss Marvel in that show, I could have seen that a little bit more, maybe them even being the main antagonist. Because for her, you also have to think she's a kid. There's a whole lot more that goes into that, I think, if we really wanted to explore like a what if scenario. I think in this case, maybe to be a little more clear, it's not so much about physicality because at the end of the day, he could wipe them. Like, let's be real. He does have those abilities, but it is more of just, yes, from that kind of like, my life could be ruined or my dreams could be crushed in that capacity, whatever capacity I want to live my life. But I just don't see that being a strong enough reason for them to be the main antagonist.
Yeah, I also think it would be a little bit frustrating to have them reveal the main antagonist in a show where they had done so much work to not reveal it. Like sometimes you like know, right? Going into the show, oh, this is who they're going to fight and this is like going to be the main conflict. I'm trying to think of a good example and I'm coming up short.
Well, I'm sure the Falcon and Winter Soldier we knew. I'm sure we knew the Flag Smashers were gonna, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure those trailers. It's been a million years, but I'm sure those trailers, like, we were kind of like, oh, okay. We didn't know who they were yet, but we were at least like, we know who the foe generally is.
Yeah, that's fair. So that's like a decent example. But then you also have other shows where they've, kind of shown it to be one antagonist and then, oop, actually it's, this other person.
Right.
I'm actually thinking of Ironheart, right? Like you thought it was going to be the Hood and that was, he was going to be kind of the person who tempts her. And then at the end, the idea would be that, okay, she's going to turn back to the side of good and everything like that. But at the end of the day, the real villain here was Mephisto, who was pulling everybody's strings. So I don't know that there's necessarily someone pulling the DODC's strings here, but I do think it could be an interesting opportunity for them to kind of push one antagonist publicly and then make us wait until the show actually comes out to reveal who the second one is. Who that could be, I mean, that's a little tough because to your point, Wonder Man is definitely a part of the Avengers. in different iterations. He actually goes against the Avengers as well in different points. The Revengers, which we saw in Thor Ragnarok, he actually in the comics is the one who creates the team, the Revengers. So that's like a whole other thing. But I say all that to say, when I was reading through, other than the Grim Reaper, who's actually his brother, there are not a ton of villains that I was like, oh, this is an iconic villain to Wonder Man. Not like Doc Ock and Spider Man. Like you think Doc Ock, you think Spider Man. There were no villains that I was like, oh, this must be the nemesis that he fights on a regular basis, which I think would be an easy prediction to make. Like, oh, they'll probably bring in this particular villain because he's one that he fights regularly, literally other than his brother. So that seems like low hanging fruit. I also read somewhere that they've kind of changed a little bit about his brother. So it doesn't necessarily seem like he's going to go that villain route. So I'm a little stuck on kind of who that additional antagonist is going to be in the show.
Yeah, and I feel like there has to be one, right? I just think that goes back to the concept of like it's just weaker to me to have it be the DODC and then to also have it already revealed to us. But I do think even if I was watching the show today and I was like, oh, so the antagonist is only the DODC, I think I would be like, not my favorite way to go about it. So I do believe there has to be another one because here's how I view this. He has to hide his powers because he wants to be an actor. Well, somebody is going to have to force him to use his powers.
Yeah.
That's the plot as far as I'm concerned. That's where my thought process is. And whether that is the DODC kind of working through Trevor and kind of manipulating the situation, okay, maybe, or there is another threat. On the other hand, maybe the DODC does manipulate the situation, but then maybe somebody a lot like what do they say in I think Vision says it in Civil War by like their mere existence it causes more threats like
Yeah.
something along that line. So then there's also the possibility of maybe the DODC has been manipulating the situation. They get him to reveal his powers and then inherently another threat arises to match that because that is what tends to happen. So I think there's a couple routes there, but I just don't see it being the DODC as the be all end all. I think we have to have another antagonist, and I would like it to be somebody who we can really see his powers play out with.
Yeah, I think the one other way that they could go if they were going to choose to make the DODC the only antagonist here is as we've seen, because Simon doesn't use his powers and really kind of suppresses them, he has some challenges controlling it with strong emotion. So that could be the one other thing that kind of forces him to use his powers or allows us to really see them in action is his kind of lack of control because he's not really working on honing them. But my hope would be that the DODC is not the only antagonist here for all the reasons you just said. I'm hoping that we do get to see him in action. I think at the end here, we should see him recruited by someone. To your point, there are two Avengers teams. I'm not sure which one. I would think probably the new Avengers would probably want to recruit him only because I think Sam's Avengers team is a little bit more like by the book trained people. Like if you think about like Sam, like Shang-Chi, the new Falcon, they're all like got extensive training. And not to say that the new Avengers don't, but they're a little bit more like, ooh, hey, party, you have like powers and we're all here together. And I just kind of feel like, I don't know, I'm going on straight vibes here, but I feel like vibes wise, he fits with the new Avengers.
I think your last sentence is what you probably want to say because you are forgetting one is a train. Actually, there's 3 trained assassins.
I understand that, but it's like, it's the fact that they were like freelance. Like, I don't know how to, I'm not
You're not explaining it well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're trying to say. I do think vibe wise, he would fit better with the new Avengers.
Yeah.
I get what you're trying to say, but the way you described it makes it sound like the new Avengers are just like, I just showed up here one day and I could kick butt. And that is definitely not them.
Right, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like there's a legitimacy to Sam's Avengers, and I don't want to get into that whole like argument. There's a legitimacy there with like he's Captain America.
It was
all
not
those things.
Probably.
I understand.
Yes.
I also feel like Valentina being in the CIA has to have a pulse on what's going on with the DODC, so she probably has intel on who they're watching.
Is she still in the CIA?
I'm not sure.
Wasn't that whole bit inside of Thunderbolts?
I mean, she was definitely on trial, but I don't actually think they've resolved that, did they?
I don't know.
Because then she goes and immediately takes credit for the new Avengers.
I don't know.
And so, like, that legitimizes her. Regardless of whether or not she's still in the CIA, she definitely has informants that she can reach out to and get information from about what's going on inside the DODC. So I think that she probably has a better line on the superpowered individuals who are potential new Avengers members, probably more so than Sam does.
Fair. I also think my perspective of the different Avengers here is more that Sam's version of Avengers are the leftover. And I don't mean that in a rude way. They're just the ones who were either part of the Avengers before or like on the cusp of it.
Yeah, or recruited by former Avengers. I'm thinking of
That's what I
Shang-Chi.
mean. Like on the cusp of it. That's why you have Joaquin. Like I think to me, that's how I kind of read that. They either were already Avengers or right on the edges of it. They knew people who were, and that's kind of how that happened. Obviously, the new Avengers, we watched them form. We know who the team currently is. So I do think because of that, I don't want to say, I mean, listen, guys, I do know what team I'm rooting for. I know who my favorite is. So I'm trying not to be biased by saying anything because it's still like points I'm trying to make. But I do think there's a level of maybe sophistication is not quite the word I'm looking for, but sort of. There's this level of just like higher, we kind of hold ourselves to a different standard that I think Sam's team kind of gives, that I just don't feel like Wonder Man is gonna naturally flow onto.
Right, because of his lack of training.
Yeah, and it's not just that, it's just like, we either were Avengers or we've been like close to them, and like we kind of were semi already recruited by old Avengers, so like there's kind of just like nepotism happening in its own way, and like that's fine. But I then think you have your motley crew that just kind of were like, we have mental health problems and we can fight, and that is how the Thunderbolts and now New Avengers were formed, low-key. So I do think, I could see that being a very natural progression for him if that's the direction we're going to go, because I would like to think that he's going to play a part in Doomsday. I really would hope that they're not just introducing this character randomly, not even less than 12 months now out from Doomsday.
Yeah. I will say the one thing in the vote of Sam's Avengers is Trevor is actually a link between Simon and Shang-Chi, who is, of course, a member of Sam's Avengers. So I was saying, like, oh, Sam probably doesn't even know because he doesn't have the line to the DODC. But once Simon's powers are fully revealed, I do think it's possible that Trevor, in his own unique way, is like, oh, I know a guy. And then, that's a potential way in as well. That could be interesting. I think, to your point, just because of like the way that Sam's is kind of like a higher barrier to entry, that could be harder, but there is that connection. I did want to point that out as well.
Well, I actually think we need to talk about Trevor because that connection is there, but Trevor's a weird character.
He's so funny.
He's so funny. And that's not even what I meant by weird, but yes.
I know. Oh, I know.
Yeah, I do love Trevor. If there's one thing I appreciate the most about Shang-Chi, it was that they just brought him back.
Yeah.
But obviously we're introduced to Trevor, and he's playing, that we learn later in the movie, the Mandarin, a terrorist, as they literally like highlight. I can't. It's where do I know him from? I think he played a terrorist. Like line from the trailer. Like it is perfect. So I appreciated they brought him back. I appreciate that through line. To your point, there is that connection. Can I really say whether it's strong or not? I don't know, because I think we're going to need to delve into where Trevor's been.
Yeah.
Obviously, when the DODC tries to, I don't even want to say tries, when they recruit him per se, it's so that he is not put in jail. He literally is like, well, obviously I'll do it so I don't have to do that. Like that is pretty much the response that they get. So I think we have to kind of fill in those holes of like where he ended in Shang-Chi and how he now is in. It makes sense for him to be in California, to be acting. That's what he does. That is literally what we learn. He is genuinely just an actor. But I think that hole has to be kind of filled in a little bit of like, where did Trevor come from? How did the DODC know to go to him of all people? Like, I just think there's a lot of questions that surround Trevor that I think actually really get written off a lot, because we're just like, it's Trevor. We love Trevor. And we don't think about the fact that it's like, I'm not saying he's nefarious in any ways, but this guy does just randomly turn up and have connections with people. And now the DODC is recruiting him to keep eyes on a very, very powerful being.
Yeah, I do think if I'm reading the trailers right, I think that Trevor and Simon had already kind of struck up their friendship, and that because the DODC was watching Simon, and obviously Trevor has his criminal history, they were then able to use that to squeeze him. I don't necessarily know that they recruited Trevor and then were like, hey, Trevor, go after Simon. Because I think he says something in one of the trailers where he's like, you want me to look at him? He's such a normal dude. Like, he's just an actor in his like special way that he says it. So I don't I do agree that we should spend some time understanding where Trevor's been. I don't think it needs to be a lot of time. A couple away lines will do, and I think Ben Kingsley is amazing at delivering really important dialogue that seems really unimportant in the way that he says it.
Yes.
So I'm imagining that's how it's done. But in terms of like, did the DODC specifically go to Trevor and then point Trevor in the direction of Simon? I don't think so.
No, fair. I'm just saying, like, this guy's getting by recruited. Regardless, he's getting recruited.
Yeah,
But regardless, it's like, why Trevor?
because Trevor has a criminal past.
Right. But like, what are the odds? And that's why I'm like, we got to start to fill in a little bit because it was one thing when the through line was always Wong, right? Like,
Yeah.
Wong makes sense. That's the Sorcerer Supreme. He was just doing what he was doing, but that was fine. If Trevor's beginning to become a through line, I'm starting to need to understand the significance of Trevor and what he does and doesn't know. I mean, let's not forget, guys. The last time we saw this man, he was with Shang-Chi on his battle with his father over the 10 rings. They, if I'm remembering the movie, though it's been a while, they were in the mystical realm that they're in that I don't remember the forest name. But like, he was not somewhere your normal everyday person normally ends up. And now he's just acting in California again. So like those are the things I'm trying to understand is like we see one side of him involved in things that are kind of just crazy if you really think about it. Obviously the Iron Man stuff, he was hired to do a job and just be that person. He didn't know anything else. But like he's been exposed now to a very mystical realm. And now he's about to be exposed to a very powerful being and things like that. So I'm just kind of like I start to run out of how many coincidences can there be?
Real question, is Trevor the Forrest Gump of the MCU?
In what way?
I feel like I saw this online somewhere. You know how like Forrest Gump, if you watch that movie, Forrest is at like unintentionally some of the biggest
Oh,
historical
yes.
moments of like the United States and in some instances the world. I feel like in some ways Trevor, and I swear I saw this online. I'm sorry whoever said it first, but it stuck in my brain. Trevor in some ways is that. Like he just happens to be at the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time depending on how you view the situation.
I mean, that's fair. He very much could be. And I'm overthinking it. But I will say, I'm starting to become suspicious of our friend Trevor.
Hey, look, if there's more to Trevor, I am open to exploring. I also just wonder if he's just someone who we can take at face value and just be like, this guy just shows up.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I do think it's interesting to have him in the show. I'm glad he's going to seemingly have pretty much or pretty much be the other main character in the show. That is exciting to me. I
Yeah.
think he is funny. And like I said, bringing him back was smart in Shang-Chi. I'm intrigued to see again, he's one of those characters that he could be face value or he could know a lot more than he ever lets on. And so that's going to be kind of interesting because I think this is going to be the first time we have the opportunity to see that and discern whether Trevor is just chilling, Forrest Gumping it, if you will, and he just happens to end up in all these situations and he's like, I don't really know how I'm here, but here I am. Or if there's a little bit more to Trevor than meets the eye and we've been writing it off because Trevor's just funny.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to both. I think Ben Kingsley has been amazing in the role in every appearance. And from the trailers, he looks like he's absolutely just going to kill it again. I think it'll be really, really fun. And, beyond just having Trevor, someone or giving us the opportunity to explore the character, I'm also happy he's in there because I think I know we've enjoyed some properties that have been very MCU agnostic. We don't know how they fit in. There's not a ton of ties. I think being so close to Doomsday, I would really struggle if we had another show that just doesn't seem to tie into anything. So the fact that we have Trevor, which is a strong tie, obviously, to Shang-Chi, the Ten Rings, and kind of all the things that surround that, even to Iron Man, even though he's not around because of his first appearance, I think that's really great. Obviously, we're like firmly ensconced in the MCU, understanding the whole idea of not allowing enhanced individuals to act. But I think having that character who we can definitively say, I've seen you before, I know who you are, you're a part of the MCU, I think helps ground the show in a time where we really need all of the properties to do something. Because we are, to your point, less than a year out from Doomsday, and I think we have a lot of work still to do. Do I think this show is going to do a ton of the footwork? No. But not having it completely out in space is extremely helpful, especially if we're going to see Simon come into Doomsday.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where the question still is going to leave itself unanswered until we watch the show, because I also think the main connector being the DODC is also helpful. I
Yeah,
think that's
sure.
nice to have that through line throughout it as well, but I do think I see the possibility of using Wonder Man to move closer to Doomsday.
Yeah.
Again, this isn't just, and obviously no tea, no shade to my fave here, but like this isn't your Bucky Barnes situation where you'd be like, okay,
What are you going to
sure.
do against Doctor Doom? Respectfully.
Yeah, and even just that, but just more of like, like why would he be on Doom's radar kind of thing.
Yeah.
This character is a character that would be on Doom's radar as far as I'm concerned. Very powerful being.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't seen him yet fully. We've seen like a little bit in the trailer, but we haven't seen him yet fully. We haven't seen the direction they're fully taking this character, but he is a powerful character. And so I, one, wouldn't want to see him not on the roster anywhere. That would be disappointing to not see him then be in Doomsday. But I also see where, the last episode could allow us to feed a little bit into Doomsday with a character like this. And so I think between the through lines and the connection into the rest of the MCU, but also what I do think the possibilities are to continue to connect it and not wrap it up with a bow. Because here's my other concern: when we wrap things up with a bow, we tend to never see the characters again.
I'm looking at you, Moon Knight.
Yeah, and that
Although
one we're
that
really
wasn't even
not
wrapped up
seeing.
with a bow.
No,
Also, the fact, just side note on Moon Knight here, the fact that he has a Victor Von Doom reference and we don't know that the character's going to be in Doomsday is insane to me. But continue. I'm sorry, I just had to go on that
I
rant.
don't believe the character will be, unfortunately. I mean, unfortunately, from a Marvel perspective, Oscar Isaac, we support you always. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, like that, this would not be the first show that we've had characters wrap up and then it's like, oh, are we going to see you again? No? Okay. So I would be concerned that that's the direction this would go. So I'm hoping there were already bigger plans. This is the type of show that does need to feed a little bit into what is to come. We don't have a lot. We have a lot of shows and things on the roster this year. Not a lot that I anticipate feeding further into Doomsday. So
Yeah.
this is one I think could do it. I mean, again, we're really kept in the dark here. Other than him trying to become an actor, we don't have a lot of information here. We don't. We know he's fighting his abilities to make sure they stay hidden so he can do this and he can play this role, and that is his main goal and his main ambition during this entire show. Trevor's there to help, although now we know Trevor is kind of like not really, but double agenting it a little bit. He's out here, so helping the DODC while also helping Simon out doing what he's doing with his acting. So we see that. I mean, we see different actors, we see the auditions, we see that stuff.
Yeah.
The core of what this is going to be about is left up in the air. And this goes even back to what we were saying with the antagonist. If there's another foe, we don't know it. And that's fine with me. Show comes out in like a week. That is fine with me. But we don't have another antagonist yet. We don't know what's going to be the really climax of the show. We have zero clue. Like, I don't have an idea of where we're going with this at all. And so I'm hoping that's indicative of something good.
Yeah, I mean, they really have been. We have seen some new footage in the last couple of days, but they've really been recycling a lot of the same scenes, which, and we're recording this about a week out from the actual show releasing, as Katie mentioned, we've come into predictions and been like, wow, they're just recycling the same scenes over and over again. This is going to be a total mystery. And then 3 days before the show or movie drops, they actually like drop a bomb and they're like, actually, here's the whole plot. So it could be that, in a few days, we're going to have a really good idea of what the plot is. But as of this recording, we do not. I do just have a random question for you, though, Katie. What do you think the odds are that we see our friend Kingo make a cameo in this?
You just woke up like something sleeping deep inside of me. I haven't heard that name in a long time. Honestly, I would love it.
I
First
know.
off, we haven't touched the Eternals since what, 2022? Which
Well,
is
they were in
blasphemy.
Marvel Zombies, technically.
Yeah, I don't even count that. That show was also made in 2022, so that's not even fair. I mean, like live action, we introduced 10 new characters, killed like 3 or 4 of them off, and then we're like, let's set up for a second one plus like 4 other characters, and we're just never going to talk about the franchise again. So,
I actually think that was 2021, so that was like a long time ago.
was it?
Yeah, because
Oh yeah, because I graduated in spring of 2022. So yes, it was November 2021.
yeah.
So yeah, okay, even worse. Yeah, I would love to see it because I think we need to keep those connections.
Yes.
If you are not in a rush to explain these characters, and quite frankly, I think they, even regardless of how, oh, the movie, whatever, the movie was great.
Yes, it was.
Everybody step off. It was really great. I still like almost watch it at least like once every maybe 3 months because it's kind of a comfort movie, not gonna lie. Besides that point, I think Marvel bit off more than they could chew with the Eternals.
Yeah.
They couldn't really explain the celestial thing in regards to everything else going on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big aspect of why they've also pumped the hate brakes, if you will. And so that was a reference, guys. I really hope you got that one. But I do think we got to keep them kind of somewhere in a realm. And so Kingo, to your point, is a great connection that I didn't even think about because he's obviously got, I mean, he's like his own infamous dynasty in Bollywood. And so I feel like we have to reference him, at least, if not have him have some sort of appearance in the show. We're literally talking about Hollywood at its finest. I mean, you've got the Bollywood dynasty with him. You got to bring him in.
Well, not to mention, it could be as simple as we don't want super powered individuals because look at Kingo. Like, if he is exposed as someone who is an enhanced individual, even though he's not human, there you go. That could simply be the reason why Hollywood has taken this hard stance on it.
Yeah, I don't think he was revealed at any point, though.
I don't think he was in the movie, but I'm saying it could have been like since then. Like I don't know what I'm just saying if you're not, because I know the actor who plays Kingo has been like really vocal about how frustrating he found the whole process to be because, he was brought on and told it was like 6 movies and like all this stuff and he had a really rough time with it.
Rightfully so. I understand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the kind of really negative reception that the film got, I say all that to say I do think it could be a tough sell for Marvel to try to get him to come back for a cameo.
Yeah, well, that's why I said even just like a reference. I mean, he's got a Bollywood dynasty. It's something. I mean, I do think that was such a good question because I really forgot about his existence and everything. But I do think there's a really clear line here that we could reference and have brought in. And so I would like to hope that maybe they will.
Yeah. Especially because we also got the next step in the story of the Celestial last year in Captain America. So it seems like the ice on the Eternals overall is maybe thawing a little bit. We had them then in Marvel Zombies, and to your point, I know that was like a lot of that was done a while ago.
We did have them in What If Season 3.
Yeah. So point there is like they have shown up or like pieces of their storyline have shown up recently. And I mean, look, this may just be the side of the internet that I'm on, but I think people are starting to rediscover the film and be like, actually, the hate was unwarranted. So maybe as like that tide turns a little bit, it'll hopefully get the studio to kind of think about like, oh, maybe these characters are worthwhile. The answer is yes, they are in fact worthwhile to pursue. But I think maybe the studio will finally come around and start to, even if it's not them announcing a new film at Comic-Con this year, start to at least acknowledge that they exist because they're cool characters and I would like to see them again.
Yeah, yeah. Acknowledging they exist is definitely something I think that can be done in Wonder Man. I think there is a connection there. I would like to see them again. I think this is a first step. I think Wonder Man has already proven it has enough MCU connection that I think there's always walking the fine line of having too much or none at all. But I
Yeah.
think honestly, having more in a show like this when you're introducing this new character and you already have, they're like not big characters or like big entities in general that I think the ties are. It's not like this guy's out here. Like I'm thinking about Spider Man when Iron Man is literally in his movie. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that is like slap you in the face. This guy, like, here's Spider Man, the characters that are tying it to the MCU are small. And so that's why I think at the end of the day, we can maybe add a little bit more to it, a little more references, a little bit more, whatever. Cause I feel like they did the same thing with She Hulk. Obviously, I don't know why I keep going back to She Hulk, of all times, but, Hulk obviously was in it for a little bit. Like, but we had the reference to the Celestial who was frozen and coming out of Earth. Like, we
Yep.
had multiple references to other things. I mean, Wong showed up, like that worked.
Yeah.
And so I think this is an interesting show because I think it could do the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. Be able to introduce a character firmly within the foundation of the MCU without Iron Man into Spider-Maning it, which was just too much. Which was too much. And we've talked about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And, as we've said a few times, this show has done a really good job of hiding what we think could be kind of the actual plot of beyond just him trying to get the role of Wonder Man. I say all that to say we don't have any other predictions left. There's nothing left to share here. We're going to call it on our Wonder Man predictions, but I do just want to emphasize we are extremely, extremely excited for this show. Do not sleep on this one. I think this one's going to be really fun. It has a absolute banger of a cast who looks like they have just done incredible performances. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I got my weeks mixed up and I really thought it was coming out this week and I got so excited,
I
and
did
then
too.
I was like, no, I have to wait another week. Disappointing. But catch us watching next week. It'll be awesome. Please make sure that you are following on your podcast platform of choice if you want to make sure that you're getting our coverage of Wonder Man when it comes out. You can also check out our website and our Buy Me a Coffee, both of which are linked in the show notes below.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials linked in the show notes down below as well. And as we are covering Wonder Man, because it is dropping all at once, that is 8 episodes, guys, coming all on the exact same day. And now, as viewers, that's great. If you're us, it's not as fun. So we will be covering it very similarly to if you've been around some of our other shows like What If, and I think we did it with Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man and some others. Every episode that is coming out, we will be doing our own reactions on social media. So you can check those out on Instagram, TikTok, all of our socials will have them on there as the episodes are coming out and we are watching them. On the podcast side of things, the first 4 episodes will be covered in one episode coming out Saturday after the show drops. And then the next 4, or the last 4, I should say, episodes, we will be covering in our second podcast episode coming out the Sunday after the show. So you will have 2 episodes from us on the podcast side covering episodes 1 through 4 and then 5 through 8. So keep an eye out for all of that content. Make sure you guys are interacting with us on our socials as we are dropping our content, and then obviously with our podcast episodes as well, as Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.